how do guys show their sons that it's okay to fail?
Man, if I can help my kids know like that is what a relationship is, all of a sudden I'm giving them a gift for the rest of their life.
How many times have you said to your kids, why don't you just listen? Or you're not respecting me, or you don't talk back because you're just in the heat of the moment.
Some kids are growing up that their heroes are objectifying women.
Is my worth only good if I can hit home runs? Or is being a good teammate just as important?
Dad made some mistakes. His dad was actually arrested for the first time at the age of 8 for moonshining. My dad himself became an addict, so he ended up getting arrested. There were some big hurdles we had to overcome in our family. Fast forward, when he died, he was one of my best friends.
Anyone with a son knows that there's this immense pressure not to screw them up. Today on the Live Change podcast, we're talking about raising boys to become men. We're going to be examining 5 of the most critical things all boys need to know to thrive in life today and into the future. Joining us in this discussion is one of our pastors, Matt Parks. Matt's a father of 2 boys himself, and he knows the joys and challenges of raising sons well. Let's go ahead and jump in. Matt Parks is back with us.
Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
So we're going to be getting into the nuance of these 5 things. Yes, if you have a daughter and you want to apply some of these things to your relationship with her, please do. I don't think, that's just for boys. No, I think you're allowed to apply these to both. But we are going to get into the nuances of raising young men today. So, first thing, we're jumping right in here. The very first thing is parents need to explain to their boys, show their boys that they are proud of them. Now, this 5 things I took from dozens and dozens of articles, some chapters of books, and even some videos, and I boiled them down to these 5 things. But I will tell you, every article, every pretty much everything I read, this one was on. It was always right at the top, is parents showing that they are proud of them. So why is telling our sons that we're proud of them so critical?
Whenever we found out we were going to have a boy, I read the book Boys Adrift, and just as a great book about how boys are wired, what's going on inside of them, and it talked about, it was really fascinating. There's this part where it talks about a 5-year-old girl versus a 5-year-old boy, and how the 5-year-old girl is much more wired to please the authority. And so you can put a 5-year-old girl in kindergarten, and she's way more inclined to pay attention, to look, whereas the 5-year-old boy is way more wired to, like, they're running, they're chaotic, it's harder to pay attention. And it just made me realize that my boys are wanting to accomplish, they're wanting to attack, they're wanting to go, they're wanting to move, like they will catch up to that developmental stage that the girls get to earlier of being able to focus and to pay attention. But I just feel like there's something in them that they want to accomplish something and to move. And I feel like they're going to keep accomplishing and moving until they hear you've done good. Like you've done something worth noticing. And so I think from a very young age, it's just wired in us that I want to know that I've done something worth noticing and something that's actually been meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even with that, there are just some traits, even I think in Finn in the age and stage that he's in. So like competitiveness, like that is a natural trait that, yes, like you carry into adulthood, but at different developmental stages, that is even more obvious, and that they're trying to figure out what to do with that. And so competitiveness, right? Like even just with Kevin coaching baseball, some of that is like Finn just wants to know if he won. And Kev is proud of the character that he's building. And so I think like it is very important for parents and for dads to express that, and then also to express what they're proud of, I think is just as important, because I think even when it's specific, then it also helps Finn know, oh, Dad's celebrating in me my good sportsmanship, not that I'm just good at hitting home runs.
Yeah, totally.
And I think sometimes even then that can get warped, and then how he's forming that sense of identity around competitiveness, that it's like, is my worth only good if I can hit home runs, or is being a good teammate just as important? And so I think like that being proud of your kids is also then calling out that specificity of like, what is the character traits
I think
you're building?
The reason for me instilling it in my son is he will look for that affirmation somewhere. And he will find it somewhere. And the way I want him to learn that he can be proud of himself is because Dad is proud of me and Mom is proud of me. I don't want him to have to go to his buddies to get that affirmation.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think making sure that they understand, like, we are proud of you, then he doesn't need the affirmation of the joke in the class as much. He doesn't need the affirmation of the buddies around the table. He doesn't need the affirmation of society. He's already gotten it. So
Yeah.
he leaves the front door with it. And that's an important thing for me. But why do you think it's most important for a young man to get this from a father figure or a male figure?
There's a podcast, The Art of Manliness. Great podcast. They did one on roughhousing, and they said that a boy will wrestle his dad to know if he's strong. And there's something about I need to know that another man thinks I am becoming manly. I need to know if another man thinks I'm strong, if another man thinks I'm tough, if another man thinks I've accomplished something. Because my mom, I just needed to know it was safe. I needed to know I could be soft. I could let my guard down. But I needed to know that that thing in me was approved by my father. And so I think there's something that light can only affirm light. And so I can only know that I have accomplished who I am by someone who is like me. And my mom can tell me all day that she's proud of me, but it just hits different when another man does.
That's great.
Yeah, it's interesting. So that actually makes me think, taking it back to scripture, right? The passage where it's like you get to heaven and it's like, well done, my good and faithful servant, right? How meaningful that is from our heavenly Father. And so for dads to be created in the image of God, like how meaningful is it for your earthly father then to give you that same affirmation?
Yeah.
And so, just when you think about the roles that dads have, and the ways the roles that dads were created to have by the Creator, like I think that even just like highlights a lot of what you just said in our relationship with Jesus too.
And even going back to what you were saying earlier, like what we affirm matters. And so early on in our boy's life, Pearl picked up that we needed to not say, oh, you're so smart, but we need to say, oh, you work so hard.
Yep.
Look at the grade that was the outcome of your effort. Because there'll come a day that they don't get the A.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean they're no longer smart. It just means they hit a harder course.
Yep.
And if we reinforce the values that we want them to have everywhere, that's what we're proud of, and that's what we're celebrating, that can carry them through the whole life whenever they're no longer able to play sports and they're no longer in class. And
Totally.
So Matt, but tell me something, like, so we just talked about fathers. Now there might be a single mom out there she's working her tail off. She's doing a really, really great job. And we just said, like, it's really important for, some of these things to be instilled from a father figure. What do you say to that mom that's like, hey, there's not a dad in the home?
Yeah. Chad, you and I, we had a chance to spend decades working with students here at our church, and we've just seen some incredible single moms. And so to all the single moms who are raising kids, man, I just salute you. And I am just so proud and impressed with their effort and the way that they are digging in. But some of the ones that have just impressed me the most is the ones who recognize that there's parts that they play, and then part of what they do is finding people to compliment.
Yeah.
And so I remember when I was in student ministry, I had a couple of moms just come to me and say, hey, I'm a single mom. Their bio dad has checked out. I don't have him in his life. I need to make sure I'm putting wise males in his life. Can you help me? And I just was blown away by the wisdom of these moms coming and saying, hey, so how do we make sure that their life group leader knows the weight of their words?
Yeah.
That we encourage, we make sure that we put them in a group with the leader who has the extra time to do the extra little touches, to say to that life group leader, like, hey, this kid needs you at their baseball game more than almost any other kid because no one else is showing up at their baseball game. And I didn't think about that because I'm thinking programming, I'm thinking about volunteer retention, I'm thinking about all the stuff of running the ministry, not the nuances of the different kids. And when that mom said, no, I just need you to help me here, I was like, you are brilliant. Yeah. And I was so proud of that mom. And it was so neat to see the leaders then come around and rally to her aid with it.
Love it.
So,
personal story. My dad worked on the road. He was a truck driver. So he was gone from pretty much Sunday morning to Friday night late. So my dad was gone a great deal of my childhood. And so you could kind of say that, I was raised by my mom and my sister. Same thing as a young man, I craved that time with men that would, teach me things and stuff. And so some of it is also just giving what a young boy does actually crave. And it wasn't about what my mom wasn't. It was just something else.
And to that point, like you made me remember my dad. He had his own business. He was very busy there. And he, in his wisdom, knew that he needed more voices in my life than just him. And so all of a sudden I found myself getting summer jobs with his friends. You know, I'm like, oh, Vince wants me to work at the HVAC company. I am positive my dad got me that job because dad wanted me to hang out with Vince that summer because he knew Vince would echo what dad is saying. I knew that he got me a job with Bill because Bill would echo what dad is saying. And so dad, even though he was limited to his hours, he made sure he added to the investment of Gary and Vince and Dan and all these other men who he brought into my life to help raise me.
That's awesome. It takes a tribe
Mm-hmm.
or it takes a village, you know, that saying. Like, and I just think that that's so important as a body of believers, as the church. We are all called to bring our gifts and talents to serve one another. And I think in the area of just child rearing and like pointing our kids in the direction that they should go. So I came from a household where my parents were divorced at a young age. I have a younger brother. And that's what my mom did is she figured out, how do I get them around other people that can fill in the gaps and help. And so I do think I would even say to some of the men listening, that if you have those gifts, also use them in your local community.
Yeah.
Like, I love that Kevin coaches, but let me tell you, our rec center absolutely needs more coaches. Yeah. And so I think that that's a really underrated gift that some men don't even know that they have to also give to others that they're doing life around.
And just a shameless plug, I think we should have so many men serving as small group leaders.
Yeah, absolutely.
And kid and student men that we have 3 men to every small group. Like, I would love to just have men rally around our kids.
And in a church of our size, we should have to turn guys away.
And I just want guys to know you don't have to be Bible scholars.
Yeah.
You just got to show up. And you just, like, my boys just need someone to say, you matter to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to you. I'm here for that question. Because there's things that my kids will ask me and I'm highly invested. There's things that they're not yet ready to ask me. So they will test it on the small group leader to then figure out, how do they ask dad? How do they ask mom? And those life group leaders are such a critical part of helping me steer my sons.
Love it. That's fantastic. So the next thing is respect towards others, but highlighting especially towards women. So this one is very countercultural because we have our young men not hearing this message about respecting others and especially respecting women.
Yeah, I think this one is something that you repeat what you see modeled. And I think the younger you see the right thing modeled, the stickier it is long term. And so I think that we just live in a culture where, actually, to what you were saying earlier, they're going to get taught how to respect other people, but who is going to teach them that? And so anyway, this one for me is just the younger that kids learn respect, the longer you'll see it play out. And so just being able to model it, I think is a great place to start.
I love that because kids, it's caught more than taught.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this particular one is caught more than taught.
I mean, even as parents, you guys, how many times have you said to your kids, why don't you just listen? Or you're not respecting me, or you don't talk back because you're just in the heat of the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all know that that's actually not helpful language. Mm-hmm. We need to call a timeout and like, hey, your words right now, like, that's not helpful to the conversation, or you're hurting my feelings. Like, I even get this wrong, right? When I'm talking to my own kids, but being able to recognize that, call a timeout and like have a conversation about it, that helps show them how to do it, not just that it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, and I totally agree. This is caught more than taught. Like, and they catch it with how I respond while driving. Mm-hmm. They catch it whenever the person calls me during dinner. They catch it with how I respond at the game. They catch it in all the areas I'm not even realize I'm doing. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I was also just thinking about is like the reason why I want my sons to know to deeply respect women is there's a couple of different reasons. One is I love my wife so much. They need to honor their mom. And so it's like, she will be my wife to the day I die, and she will be their mom until the day that she dies. And I want them to have a great relationship with her because I know the value that she brings to their life. And so I want them to honor her. The second thing is I want them to have the relationship with their future wife that I am just learning to have with Pearl. Mm-hmm. And so if we know that spouses make such an influence on our long-term happiness, why would I not give them the tools to have long-term happiness? Whereas if I leave society to raise my boys, they then are being taught to use women, which then they're being taught to be lonely the rest of their life, to be desperate the rest of their life, to be longing the rest of their life. And we all know that all of the the dating habits that are popular right now, it just leaves you lonely. It leaves you empty.
Yeah.
Whereas I think God gave us this incredible design
Mhm.
with intimacy that he said, hey, when two truly become one, you can have heaven on earth. And I think that is, man, if I can help my kids know, like, that is what a relationship is, all of a sudden I'm giving them a gift for the rest of their life. And I've given my grandkids a gift. And so if a wise man leaves a legacy to his grandchildren,
Mhm.
then I'm setting up future generations to be able to experience the goodness of God, because it all starts with, man, how do you do life with others well?
And I
That's
think
awesome.
this is the one that this is important because society is teaching something very different than this. So we're not just teaching this because there's a gap. We're teaching this because there's an opposite message coming in.
Yeah.
And so young men are hearing from music and movies and video games that women are objects. And I want my son to leave every day knowing that women are meant to be in a place of honor,
Yep.
and we're supposed to honor women. We're supposed to protect women. We're supposed to be respectful to women. I want him to hear that and know that truth has come from home. That stuff out there is lies. And I think because pretty soon he will not be in the home anymore before I know it. And he's going to have to test all that stuff out that's going to keep coming at him.
Yep. And he learns respect from, what jokes do I laugh at? What shows do I watch? What's on my Instagram feed? How do I treat Pearl? Like, my boys are catching all of that. I love that right now there's apps that we simply don't allow them to have because of the graphics that are in them. And some people look at us like, oh my goodness, you're so old fashioned. And I'm like, no, we're not going to objectify people.
Yeah.
And I love that my boys are honoring that.
Love that.
Yeah, I was just trying to look up a passage quick. So, I mean, even back to Genesis. So Genesis 1:26 said, then God said, let us make human beings in our image to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, all the wild animals of the earth, and the small animals that scurry across the ground. Some translations will use the word co-laborers. Like, it matters because men and women were meant to be co-laborers over the things that they do. And so when I think about even my two kids, right? So I have a boy kid and a girl kid. And it's funny because actually sometimes we just call them boy and girl. Like, they are meant to work together. I want Finn to cheer his sister on.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want Junie to cheer Finn on, right? And
Love
so
that.
like, just that word picture of that side by side, like that God has called us to do this together. That's why respect matters. And in a world that's broken, we will mess with that all day, right?
Yep.
But when you look back to the design of men and women coexisting, like, it was for the intention of working together to steward what God has given us. And so anyway, like, I think that's just such a powerful picture that then you almost are like, well, then obviously we respect one another, and that's important. And that's
Totally.
important why we have to teach it.
I love that, Joanna. But I want to remind everyone listening, some kids are growing up that their heroes are objectifying women. Their heroes are cruel to the opposite sex. And there's some women that are daughters, same thing. They're just as disrespectful to men. So we have to model this at home, or society will fill in the job of teacher.
Yeah.
And society does not get this one right.
It seems like the cultural narrative of what a man is swings. So there's toxic masculinity, and then it swings to another direction. And so it's just like, what does it even mean to be a man? And the thing that I want my boys to have is not some stereotype that they impose upon a woman. What I want is what Jesus himself said, where he said, you lay your life down to serve them.
Mm-hmm.
You lay your life down to protect them. You lay your life down to care for them. And so I want my boys to respect their little girls, their wives so much that they're like, here's my life to serve you. Because I think if they can learn that posture, it just sets them up to be co-laborers in a profound way.
Love it. So how do guys show their sons that it's okay to fail?
Dads have to fail too.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
It is so funny. So I think this one is interesting because I think there's a lot of family of origin stuff that comes into play, right? And so even I think Kev would be okay with me sharing this. A couple years ago, him and I did some counseling together, just to work through some junk that we had to work through, right? And so one of the things she just kept coming back to was like, oh, interesting. So how was that modeled in your home? Oh, interesting. How was that modeled in your home? And so I think that with the failure piece, so much of it comes back to how you've seen others handle failure or the tolerance level in which you were allowed to fail.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for that one, I think teaching it through example and also calling out when you fail ungracefully and just being able to have conversations about that. So then they know what to do when they fail. And you're saying it's okay to do that.
Parker, my 11-year-old son, called me out, and it's hard to admit that I had to admit to him that Dad was wrong. We were driving, and this guy, I pulled onto the road, and this guy that was behind us was going a little too fast, and he came up on us quick. Okay, you know, like one of those situations where he clearly wanted to ride with us in the back seat. I am in the car, and I have this car machismo about me where I'm like, this testosterone is bubbling in me, and I'm like, well, you're gonna slow down now, and I start to slow down the car to about 20 under the speed limit.
Oh my word!
And I'm like, how you like that? And Parker from the back seat goes, Dad, that you're not driving well. And he was like, you shouldn't let him. You know, he said it in his Parker way, but you shouldn't let him, you know, affect you like that. I literally, guys, I have to admit it. I was like, my response to my son was, Parker, you're not driving. You don't know how to drive. So
I don't need a backseat driver right now.
My response, he was right.
Yeah.
And all I wanted him to do was like not be right in that moment and for me to be right. It took me a day. I went back to him the next morning and I was like, Dad was wrong. I was like, I was a very foolish driver there. Not only what I do was not very safe. I shouldn't have slowed down. But when I did that, I let his bad attitude affect me. And I was like, and I teach you not to do that. And I was like, you were right.
Yep.
And I was wrong. And I'm sorry. And his response was, Parker was right. He goes, I can't hear that enough. Because I was like, oh,
say it again, Dad. Say it again.
Yeah, I think that's going to be his ringtone now.
Nice.
That's awesome.
But you know, Chad, going back to your original question, why does this matter so much? Like, I want to model for my boys not where I have arrived, but what I am clinging to. And what I'm clinging to as a follower of Jesus is grace.
Yep.
And so I want to continually model that grace wins. Grace wins. And so just as I need grace for others, I need grace for myself. And what I want them to see most of me is that I'm clinging to Jesus. And so if I'm not showing them where I need grace, then they don't know they need grace.
Yeah.
And I mean, actually with that, like that also makes me think that they learn to rely on their own strength. And we don't want them relying on their own strength, right? And so I think that's also just a great practice that it's like you can't figure it out on your own because we weren't meant to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's powerful.
That's great. That's great. So good news. You can do this tonight.
Oh my word. Yes. Yes.
You can. I told another story on the podcast, like, you know, the time that I yelled at a pizza guy and I had to tell the kids, like, I'm going to go call the pizza guy and apologize. So there's, you can do this tonight and it matters because guess what? You're going to suddenly see your kids say, I'm sorry.
But if you can, man, if it is safe enough for a kid to tell the parent, hey, I don't think that's behaving how we want to behave. I think that's gold because they know how do we as a family want to behave.
Yeah.
And then they feel safe enough to challenge the parent. I love it. I love it. So I hope my kids hold me to the standard that we want to hold for each other.
Yeah. That's what we can hope. So next thing is value of work. Now this is an interesting one. Okay. So like we could definitely apply to boys and girls, but this is this idea of work is bad in our culture. We don't want to work. We shouldn't want to work. We live for vacation. We live for the weekend. Work is yucky and we should hate it and despise it, like, you know, get ready to avoid it. But I think there is something that's different about God's design for work. And Matt, I'm really excited to hear you talk about this because I've heard you talk about work in the past. So Matt, how do we teach our kids that work is not the root of all evil and it's okay to work?
I think we got to remind ourselves that when God created us, he created us to work. Work, like hard work came after the fall, but work came with creation. So there is something from the very beginning that we were created to work. So work is not sin. Work being hard, work being futile, work feeling meaningless, work feeling like it doesn't have a value, that's a part of sin. And so as followers of Jesus, we're constantly trying to, how do we redeem? How do we move back to life before the fall? And so part of that is recognizing, no, I'm made to work. I am made to feel tired at the end of the day. And if I'm not tired at the end of the day, I probably didn't do something in the day. And so like work is good from the design of creation. Where I think guys start to miss it is if they miss the purpose of work and the value of what they're doing. And so if I heard a statistic once that it is better to have less time with a parent who is passionate about their work than to have more time with a parent who's not passionate about their work. So it is better for a parent to work 55 hours a week in love with their job and on purpose with vision behind it, and to come home from that place than it is to work 35 hours a week and be miserable at home. And so I think there's something that as dads specifically, if we can just say, no, here's the mission that I'm on, the purpose that I'm on, the value that I'm on, the trajectory of my life that I'm on, life has purpose, then all of a sudden work is a fulfillment of a bigger vision. And one of the things that I've had to have several conversations with is some of us are lucky enough that our job, our vocation is the fulfillment of the purpose of our life. Some of us have to realize that it's just the vehicle to the purpose of our life. And so whenever I realize that, I'm blessed enough that my job is the fulfillment of the vision of what I feel called to do. But I know a lot of guys who they're like, no, my job just gives me the financial stability and the freedom to go do what I'm created to. Well, then all of a sudden, like they have purpose in their work because they know that, that 9 to 5 is what gives them the freedom to then go do the thing that they're called for. And their kid gets to see them living on purpose with vision and meaning. And that's what I want my boys to have, because I want them to know their life has purpose and meaning. And it's not the doldrums waiting for the weekend.
Because I think there is something about, if we as parents constantly talk about work as the boogeyman in the room, kids are going to grow up viewing it as the enemy.
Yeah.
And in actuality, work is empowering. It's very good. It gives honor. And not only does it provide us with income and stuff, but it is actually something we as humans were built to do. And I love what you said about that in creation is like, we were built to work, and it's not a bad thing. And there's this sense of hitting your head on the end of the day. And it doesn't matter if you have a desk job and you're working at home, or you're working in a factory, or you're working in the Coast Guard. It doesn't matter. The point is, there's something very satisfying when you say, I did good today.
Yeah. I accomplished something.
Yeah, it's interesting. There is a couple of places in scripture that use the word toil. And like toil, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but just that idea of like meaningless work day in and day out that doesn't really have any life or purpose, right? And so it's funny, even personally, I was in a season where I had a job that probably felt a little like toil, but I needed it, right? It was paying the bills. It was helping support the household and, all that, right? I had someone say to me, hey, but what that job is allowing you to do is to have the flexibility to be a high school group leader. Actually, I was a high school group leader at the time. And so that...
A very good one, may I say.
Thank you. That season, like work may have not been the thing full of purpose, and it probably felt like toil, right? But that redemption, trying to get closer towards, okay, so that's not the end. That's just the means to be able to do something else that is more purposeful. That was such a great reframe.
Yeah.
And I know we have listeners that they are in roles and jobs that really do feel like a job. Not like this, oh my goodness, I wake up every day and my job is my purpose. But I also think that reframe of like, cool. So in light of that, what does that enable you to do to feel more like you're in that work? And so even talking to Finn, I mean, he's not like of work age, but he'll joke like, oh man, like I want to work at Chick-fil-A. I want to get that free meal, right? I think we all know when he gets to that point, I don't know that he's going to say, man, mom, like that's like, that's what I'm thinking I'm going to do forever. but the redemption of like, cool. So then that will allow you to do X, Y, and Z. And like, I want you to feel like you're waking up contributing.
Yep.
Like that's the other thing too, right? Like I want you to wake up feeling like you're contributing to something else. Like that's again, the underlying character build that I also think like work is a great vehicle for that.
So to say it more sternly, I want my kids to know work is not the problem.
Yeah.
My lack of purpose is the problem.
Yeah, that's good.
Mm.
And if I don't know what the purpose of my life is, no job will ever fix it. And so many of us are trying to change our job when really we just hadn't found our purpose.
Yeah.
And our kids can feel that difference.
And I think there's also something when we have an eye on God in eternity. So, Matt, I've heard you quote the scripture where it talks about do everything as if you're doing it for the Lord. And sometimes that can be, maybe you're working at the Mac store and like you actually did one time. And I remember you were going to school, you were working at the Mac store, and I remember you said...
I like that you keep calling it the Mac store.
Is it not the Mac store?
It's just like the Apple store.
Oh. Why don't I call it the Mac store?
The big shiny metal store in the mall. Yeah.
I'm really hip, kid.
Your old is showing.
So the Apple store.
Macintosh, okay.
Yeah. So you worked at the Apple store. Tell me something that was far from your purpose.
Oh man, yeah.
That was far from your purpose. But yet you tried to have an attitude. How, when you have a job that is maybe sucking the life out of you, how do you work with purpose as if you're working for God?
Oh man, I remember, and that takes me back, Chad. I hadn't thought about being at the Apple store. I remember there were days that I would walk in and I would just say, my integrity is getting developed today. Like today, my integrity is getting developed if I will show care and patience and attention, if I will work with excellence through the day. Like this has nothing to do with me stocking shelves or ringing people up correctly. It has everything to do with, do I have integrity to do the hard work today? And if I can do that in a retail job that I hated, then that develops the muscles for whenever it mattered more. And it takes you back to that verse where it says, if you can be trusted with little, you'll be trusted with more. Because if my integrity had faltered there, why would God ever give me an opportunity to where my integrity would be trusted more or tested more? So it was a matter of integrity for me to serve and to serve well.
But it was a mindset.
Yeah.
I love that.
And it also was a reminder that, what's the verse that says we're the ambassadors of God? He's making his appeal to men through us. And I wasn't selling computers. I was being an ambassador with computers. And so
That
every
can change
customer,
everything.
yeah.
That is
every
a
customer is an
worldview.
opportunity. Yeah.
That changes everything.
And that's what I want my kids to know.
And
Totally.
that is a perfect segue to our last of the 5, which is Jesus is Lord of life. The most important thing we can teach our kids, boy, girl, doesn't matter, that Jesus is Lord of life. Now, I want to, we can teach our kids about Jesus, and we can teach our kids that Jesus is Lord, but we also have to teach our kids that Jesus is Lord of life, our entire life, not just Sundays, not just Christmas, but every decision, every day, every morning, every evening, every night. Jesus is Lord of life. So how do we instill to our kids that Jesus is the most important thing in their life?
Yeah. So this might sound so trivial, but in our house, Kevin does bedtime a lot of the nights. And it's funny because I know he's going to be listening to this thinking like, yes, I do it. And the kids are wild and crazy. And there's a lot of nights that even between him and I, we get it wrong, right? Where there's still not tears and tantrum. But it is awesome to see. So our kids are about 5 years apart. I remember, we were just talking about this the other night. I remember Finn at Junie's age when every night it was like, Dad, 5 more minutes. Please don't leave. Keep rubbing my back. Can I have one more story? A cup of water. Like I have to go to the bathroom for the 14th time. And like the frustration that's like, oh my gosh, would you just go to bed?
Absolutely.
To like fast forward to like now Finn, 5 years later, it's like we're having conversation. Like I have so many voice memos that one day Finn will kill me for having just of giggling and jokes. And that is just him and his dad being together. And so, yeah, that is the moments that they've instilled devotions. Like we've just started to try to get Junie like doing that in the evenings. And so it's just like so much conversation happens between the two of them at bedtime. And so I also know that's not the case for all families and that won't work for all families. And so I think a lot of times we'll say, hey, you just got to find what works for you and your household. But for Kevin and the kids, like that has been a great spot to be like, hey, we're going to close our day together. And like, I want to hear about you. I want to celebrate you, you know?
That's good.
And so I think, yeah, that's just been really rich.
You know, Joanna, you're talking about these voicemails. So my dad passed away in 2001 or 2021. And some of my most prized possessions are voicemails from him because they were his words to me. Where if you know my story, which I've shared it over the years, some on the main stage, is my dad, dad made some mistakes. He came from a real crazy life. His dad was actually arrested for the first time at the age of 8 for moonshining. And so like he grew up in a crazy household. My dad himself became an addict. So he ended up getting arrested. So he had to go through rehab. Like there were some big hurdles we had to overcome in our family, but getting to see Jesus become real to him and not a cultural expression, not a Sunday expression, not a community thing, not a, we live in the South thing, but like to watch my dad make Jesus the Lord of his life transformed who my dad was. So I got the privilege at the age of 8, 9, 10, 12, watching my dad truly become a life changed by Christ. And then because I got to see Jesus change him, all of a sudden, because it was changing what dad was doing, how dad was spending his time, how like I remember watching my dad pray next to his bed every night. Like I remember like it wasn't just a thing we did. It was truly his North Star. Fast forward when he died, like he was one of my best friends. Whereas we were not on that trajectory before. And so for me, it's like, if you want Jesus to be the Lord of your kid's life, he's got to be the Lord of your life. And if you want Jesus to matter to your kids, he's got to matter to you. And my dad never tucked me into bed. Like that wasn't our jam. My dad didn't hug me a lot. That wasn't his thing. But my dad made Jesus the Lord of his life. And I caught so much of the little things he did. So like my morning routine, I learned from him. My bedtime routine, I learned from him. The way I pray, I learned from him. Like you just catch it. And so if I want my kids to know Jesus, I've got to be pursuing Jesus because that's where they're going to figure it out.
Wow. Thank you so much for tuning into the Live Change podcast. And remember, our kids are learning from us, and way more is caught than taught in schools already in session. So if it's your kids, or maybe it's the kids around you, kids in your community, make sure you're instilling these things. And there's a lot more that we'll talk about in future episodes, but these 5 things are a great place to start even tonight. So if you like this episode of Live Change podcast, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. We love to read those. And as always, now that your life changed by Christ, live that change.